Hello, and welcome to me just ranting about something I find interesting, honestly. Perhaps I'll call it a scram. I've got a special interest to share. You clicked on this video. Let's get into it. When I think of the games that I hold closest as my most cherished virtual experiences that make me the gamer I am today, Morrowind is, undoubtedly, exceptionally high on that list. I played it originally in 2002 on the Xbox, because back then I was a console kid. Sadly, this was in the time before my playtime tracking was ubiquitous, but I probably had several hundred hours across my characters. I usually estimate 700 to 1,000 hours, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being more than that. I eventually moved to PC and bought the Elder Scrolls Anthology, which is just all of the games, and though my rate of playing Morrowind has certainly slowed in the years since release, I have another 250-ish hours on it just on PC. Also, controversial statement, the UI in Xbox Morrowind is the best console UI Bethesda's ever done. Actually, do I need to mention the state of the game in this background footage? It's a pretty simple setup, so if this video somehow convinces you to try the game, here's a basic, very vanilla setup. I am running a retail Steam copy with all DLC via OpenMW version 0.48.0 because I just don't feel like bothering with the development version until it's out. Hey, editor tech here. So I assumed the in-development version was going to require setting up a development environment and compiling the thing myself, and I didn't feel like dealing with that, but it turns out they actually release compiled binaries of the development branch, so you can just download and run it, and it's pretty damn stable. I went ahead and recorded new footage because the water and lighting look a little nicer, and the performance is pretty significantly improved, so you're actually seeing footage from 0.49.0. Kinda doesn't matter, but I thought it would be irresponsible if I didn't correct myself. The only mods I have installed are the official plugins. I went with the file that compiles them all into one. The patch for purists, which is mostly bug fixes and stuff, though I do use all three modules. A silly one that renames gold to drakes, because this is a role-playing game, damn it, and real signposts, because being able to read signs from across the street just feels right. That's right, official content, bug fixes, and 2 tiny asset swaps for immersion. That's it. I run this game lean. It's all linked below in the description if you care for some reason. Yeah, it's time for another editor tech interlude. I promise this isn't going to be a theme. So I pulled this list of mods from the OpenMW launcher, which for some reason doesn't list the expansion delay mod despite having it installed. The Tribunal DLC sends an assassin after the player when they sleep to introduce you to the expansion, but the assassin is tuned for a character that's already finished the main quest, so it's really strong for a low-level character, and it drops endgame armor that kind of ruins progression. This mod just delays that until a more reasonable time. Alright, editor tech out, I promise this is the last one. Safe to say, I love this game. And considering you clicked on a video with Morrowind on the thumbnail, you probably do too. But why? The reason I always see online is that the world of Morrowind is deeply immersive through the density and quality of its world building and lore. Despite the stiff animations, lackluster graphics, and clunky controls, the richly realized detail of the world makes it feel alien and lived in and fantastical. It's unlike anything else that I played at the time, and it still stands out from the crowd today. This was in a day and age when most games were chasing after being a Halo killer, and the 3D open world of Grand Theft Auto 3 was less than a year old. Morrowind felt new. It felt like unlimited freedom in a lush and beautifully realized fantasy world, the likes of which are rarely seen even today. Except for the graphics, those were always pretty crap. This, I believe, is objectively true. I think we can all agree that Morrowind's world is incredibly well presented within the game, graphics aside, regardless of your opinion of the admittedly pretty dated gameplay. Okay, we need to talk about the gameplay. It's pretty rough. It maybe even rough enough to be objectively bad, at least in the early game when your skills are very low. or if you're just a new player and making some very poor decisions, as we all did. But even ignoring the mechanics of combat in Morrowind, it just feels bad. As an example, Halo came out, 6 months before Morrowind? It's also a first-person game with melee attacks. Melee in Halo isn't the game's primary focus, yet it still feels better than Morrowind, and I'm convinced that this problem could be solved with liberal application of decent animations, mostly. It's no secret that Morrowind's animations and character models leave a lot to be desired. In combat, this lack of feedback for the player's actions leaves your actions feeling incredibly vague and disconnected. My point is, Morrowind did not have refined action gameplay even for its time. Morrowind, to be brutally honest, is pretty damn clunky across the board. Combat feels terrible, the menu icons are nearly useless in the original resolutions. We had to read dozens of pages of text on blurry CRTs. Some of the quest givers give partial or even just flat out incorrect directions. List continues. If you miss Solus Gravius's suggestion that you visit the Silt Strider and just head straight out of town, you're lucky there's road signs that tell you where Balmora is. Actually, let's look at the player's introduction to the game as it plays as background video. And you thought it was purely low-effort filler. I mean, it is because my editing skills don't exist, but it was still chosen with intention. Skipping past all the stuff that Seydanine has to offer, the first main story quest sends you to Balmora to deliver a package to Caius Casades, and that is how I'm saying that, and gives you a hint where to find him. You have to go to the South Wall Corner Club, its name is itself a hint where it might be, and ask around for where to find Caius. But only the owner knows where he is, and he's probably not who you'll talk to first. Once you do find the owner, he gives you directions to Caius's house. Not a waypoint and a nav marker on the HUD, but turn left onto Broadway and 3 lights down kind of directions. At no point during any of this were there nav markers or objectives on screen. That would today be inexcusable. Now, the usual argument from this point would be that walking uphill to school both ways in sweltering August snowstorms builds character, and therefore this design ethos is better. Or that this is all unnecessary friction for the player to endure and solely detracts from the experience. But I think the kind of difficulty that Morrowind presents to the player is one that is wholly unique to video games, and was critical in the formation of a sense of community in the early days of gaming. First, let's define what this difficulty is. Typically, when one considers the difficulty of a game, you may think of selectable difficulty options, or the intentional mechanical difficulty of a game as designed by the developers. But I think there's another kind of difficulty, unique to games, which is dealing with the realities of it, well, being a game. This is the intangible little things, how intuitive the menus are, how good the controls feel, how the combat feels, if it has modern resolution and input support, if you can even get it running in the first place and not just crashing all the time. All these little details that don't show up on a spreadsheet of numbers used to determine the mechanical difficulty of a game, like attack strength, speed, range, etc. Morrowind scores pretty high on this kind of difficulty. There's a relatively high base level of not just game knowledge, but determination that one must bring to the table to play Morrowind, and an even higher level to come to enjoy it. Let's consider the new player experience as it is today. There's a few options, but the overwhelming opinion seems to be in favor of OpenMW. So getting that installed and set up is a potential barrier to entry, as easy as it may be. The OpenMW launcher has a little bit of programmer interface jank and an ungodly wall of options, so that can be a bit much for people. Then you get it running and you'll probably have a bunch more settings to mess with that require a restart. Honestly, this is all par for the course when playing older titles, but not everyone is willing to put up with it. There is a reason Todd said it just works in that infamous presentation, and Apple's entire business is focused on making computers easy. Or at least it was during the golden years of Apple, when they made devices that were designed primarily to computer real good rather than make money real good. And don't get me started. Anyway, we're in. It looks terrible, but we knew that was the case when we started. Then you go through character creation, which is a bunch of weird decisions with not enough context around them. There are pretty detailed tooltips though, they help. You better believe I still have the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages open every damn time though. At the end of what can charitably be described as a tutorial, you get a dialogue box. Press J to use your journal and review what you've been told. You should probably check out Ariel's trade house up on the left. You're on your own now. Good luck. And that's it. The game isn't lying to you, you are on your own. That's all the instruction you're given for the entire game. You're sort of pointed at the local shop and in the vague direction of another city and otherwise left entirely to your own devices. There is an amount of work that must be put in to figure out what it is you should be doing, and very much to its credit, this is consistent throughout the game. You are entirely left to your wits. This was not uncommon at the time. Again, doubling back to the then recently released Halo didn't expect the player to be familiar with the concept of nav markers, so it has a pop-up to explain them. Yeah, imagine a full half-screen dialogue and voiceover explaining what a waypoint is. Games sure have changed, huh? Morrowind may have come out during the start of the ubiquitous objective marker, but it did not have them. In fact, it has nothing on screen at all to lead the player in the right direction. The mini-map, such as it is, isn't really usable as anything more than a compass. Morrowind will happily send you to a dungeon by name only, and you'll have to search the entire thing to find the item you need. And sometimes, you realize that item was right near the entrance anyway. Your journal and your wits are your greatest tools in Morrowind. And there's something to be said for that. That's free immersion right there. But we gamers of yore were not entirely alone in this strange land. No, we had this big boy manual that weighs 51 grams. Okay, I thought that number was going to be a lot more impressive. Look, it's by far the largest manual I've ever seen in a console game. There are 45 pages of actual Morrowind information, and none of them are those empty note pages. Do you remember those? Has anyone ever used those? You know what? Leave a comment if you have. I'm super curious. Anyway, manual is great. It explains mechanics in ample detail. Then there was the lovingly detailed physical map on which you can see which towns have Siltstrider ports. Look, there's one. And many of us had to hand the hefty tome that is the official strategy guide, the Morrowind Prophecies. Seriously though, this thing is awesome. It has charts for character creation, there's walkthroughs for every single quest, and an annotated atlas with every conceivable point of interest marked and described. This is a wiki in book form. You'll also note that I still have a bookmark in my copy. It's the insert that came with the game advertising the strategy guide. Yeah, this is a well-loved book. But even with all these resources at hand, there are things no one will catch their first several times playing the game. Secrets just off the beaten path, different endings for quests, and strategies that aren't at first apparent. The struggle to even engage with the medium of games is unique to games. A movie only requires that you find it on your shelf, physical or metaphorical, and play it. A book only requires that you turn the page. This YouTube video only requires that you like and subscribe. Okay, that was stupid. I started thinking about this because I was watching a YouTube video by Frostbreak. I'll link it below, and it's absolutely worth a watch if you've somehow found my video before that one, but the short of it is that they're playing the game totally blind, roughly how it would have been experienced when it came out. Open MW, but otherwise, no mods that change anything, and staying away from guides. And while I was watching this video, I realized the things they're struggling with are the same things I struggled with 22 years earlier. They're asking the same confused questions. What do I do? Where do I go? Why can't I hit anything? How do I improve my skills? How do I accrue coin for trade and training? These are now shared experiences that Frostbreak and I share, that we share with all players of Morrowind. Us old heads were not better adapted to the challenges of old games, we were just kind of used to it. Those edges have been sanded down in modern games. I was going to say for better or worse, and I do think there's definite arguments in favor of sanding, but sanding always removes something, and I think a little bit of struggle is actually good for a video game to have. Numerous studies, I'll link one below, and Untold Centuries of Anecdotes, indicate that people who experience a shared pain or a struggle grow closer. This is perhaps most clearly seen, or at least identified, in soldiers, the whole brothers in arms thing. Now, obviously I'm not comparing gaming to war, but when you meet someone that enjoys a game you do, you have a shared experience with that person, warts and all. Not only that, but the cracks in a game like Morrowind or, hell, Pokemon invites playground rumors, sharing tips and tricks you heard through the grapevine, the details of mechanics you figured out before your peers. This was gaming's analog community before the rise of the internet. Then you had forums, game facts, and eventually social media, but without the need to communicate in the early days, would we have? Would gaming be what it is today without the struggles present in a game like Morrowind? Or the hidden golden bolts of Ratchet and Clank? I don't think it would be. The foundation of social interaction in gaming was sharing. The sharing of information, rendering assistance. Co-op, in a very loose sense. I'm really stretching that definition. Now, though, this transfer of knowledge happens through wikis, dispersed through entire communities at incredible speed in an endless arms race towards the solution, the optimal way to play the game. I don't want to get into players optimizing the fun out of games in this video, but I can't help but notice that the tone of conversation around games has shifted. It is no longer about how to accomplish feats, it is about optimization. It is no longer how to experience the game, but how to dominate it. There's no shortage of this for Morrowind specifically either. Hardly a forum thread about the game goes by without someone mentioning fortify intelligence potions. If you know, you know. Skyrim has the stealth archer. Oblivion has terrible level scaling or something, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know how to fix the culture of gaming, if it even needs to be fixed, but I find the struggles that we've shared through gaming interesting, and I think they're an important aspect of this hobby. Without those sharp edges, maybe we wouldn't have gaming at all, at least not as it is today. If you thought this kind of rambling was neat, I already said like and subscribe. Do that though, thanks. You can also leave a comment or join the Discord linked somewhere in the description. This is the first video of a new thing I'm trying where I just kind of talk about whatever's on my mind and I don't worry too much about the video editing. I think about gaming and other weird niche stuff an awful lot, and I've been wanting to put something like this out there for years, so expect to see more. If you have feedback, seriously, leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. But at the end of the day, thank you very much for stopping by and lending me your ear. And, as always, have a great one.